Hey everybody, Shaun here, the author of the Throne series, and wait a second, what's that right there? Oh, could it be a proof copy of Sword of the Broken Sun, book number 2 in the Throne series? Yes, it is. We have released books 1 through 3 of the Thrones books, Secret of the Lost King, number 1, number 2, Sword of the Broken Sun, and then number 3, Skin of the Dragon Lord. I'm getting all my author copies in just a couple days, and I'm super excited to see it. And so this has been a lot of fun to see my book in print and to see just all the things that already people are saying about how much they like the books and how much they're enjoying them. Some people have been sending me copies of, or pictures of copies of the books that they've gotten. So it's been a ton of fun just to see people enjoying these stories. It's an epic fantasy series that is filled with lots of adventure and action. I love to have monsters in all of my stories. So these are just a lot of fun to read and to write. And speaking of writing, this is actually National Novel Writing Month, NaNoWriMo, or NaNoWriMo, but I really think it's NaNoWriMo personally, because you say write, not read, but whatever. So I thought today I would give you a short bookshelf tour of all of my writing books. So, and maybe you're in the middle of NaNoWriMo. You're writing your first novel, or you're writing your 25th novel, and you just want to know what books are there out there that can help me in my writing journey. So these are just a few books that I've really enjoyed some of them. A couple I haven't totally finished reading. I've read like a chapter or two of. So I hope these are ones that you might consider picking up and taking a look at for yourself to help you in the craft of writing and helping you as an author who wants to connect with your readers better. So the first couple books here I have are kind of like encouragement type books. This is Some Writers Deserve to Starve. And it's a collection of different people kind of giving little thoughts on different things about the writing life. Like, you know, for instance, we have things like the fiction writer's subgenre Circle-a-thon, and you go through and highlight what are some different genres that you like, and you kind of take a look at what are some different nonfiction genres, and what else is there in a proposal, like how do you put together a proposal. So this is a great book with just some easy encouragement. If you want to just read one little part, you can. It's quick to read, and that is Some Writers Deserve to Starve. The next book I've got here is by Natalie Goldberg, and this is called Writing Down the Bones. And this book, it's so great. It's kind of written in a encourage you in your author journey style. So it has everything split up into these little tiny vignettes, like this one's on writing in restaurants, or it has things Natalie Goldberg's written in here about, you know, every Monday do these things. This edition is a hardback one that's a smaller one that actually has a ribbon, and I love having the ribbon because I can mark my place, read one chapter a day, that kind of a thing. So that is Writing Down the Bones by Natalie Goldberg. This is a great, great book. The next one I have is another collection of just different thoughts. It's called The Glimmer Train, and this is Volume 1, A Guide to Writing Fiction Building Blocks. And so The Glimmer Train, it has just tons of chapters and little like short essays on all kinds of different things, like creating motion in a single space. So all kinds of things that you would never even think about. You know, everyone speaks a little truth, and then all about the difficulty with villains. So this book gives you a lot of different fun little writing ideas. It's a pretty big book, so it's another one that you could read like a couple at a time. I also really love, it's got like a fun cover on there. I really like it. So this one's The Glimmer Train, Building Blocks, Guide to Writing Fiction. The next couple books I have are kind of 3 books on the author life in general and from different perspectives. So the first one is by Claire Taylor. She was a co-host of the Sell More Book Show podcast, and she wrote a book called Reclaim Your Author Career. She's also written a lot of fiction, and so in this book, she's super into what's called the Enneagram. The Enneagram is a personality test that can tell you like what kind of person are you, what kind of things are you afraid of, what kind of things motivate you. And so she uses the Enneagram to help you think about your writing career. So I am an Enneagram 7, which is a person who loves to do fun things, find new adventures. So obviously my books have a lot of adventure in them and lots of new things happening. It's a lot of fun. It's a great read, Reclaim Your Author Career by Claire Taylor. The next one I have is Writing with Quiet Hands, How to Shape Your Writing to Resonate with Readers. And this book is an interesting one. I haven't read the whole thing yet. I've only read some chapters, but it's kind of about how to take your writing author career in a little bit of a quiet way, if that makes sense. Like, you kind of go through these different things, like, you know, just quiet brainstorming and thinking about the art of writing. And so this one is about like really the art of writing and the writing craft. So that's Writing with Quiet Hands. The next one I've got here is, if you're like me and you have a day job, Writer with a Day Job is a great book. This one will really take you through a lot of different exercises and ideas on what do you do when you work 40, 50, 60 hours a week and you also want to write? How do you fit in your writing time? How do you take those, 15-minute lunch breaks, or, hopefully longer than 15-minute lunch breaks, but it happens. How do you take those little lunch breaks or those moments in between all the other things to get the words on the page? And so this one goes through a lot of great exercises and things. It gives you some good ideas. It's kind of an overview on all writing things like character, setting, plot, etc. So that is Writer with a Day Job. Then moving into some of my craft books, really on how to write kind of things about different topics. The first one I have here is Noah Lukeman's The Plot Thickens, 8 Ways to Bring Fiction to Life. And this book, I still have it bookmarked in some spots because I go back to it every now and again. He goes through really great ideas for thinking about your plot very specifically, like how to make your plot better, how to move your plot forward, how to not let your plot get stuck. So that is The Plot Thickens. Along the same lines is the Writer's Digest book, Write Great Fiction entry on plot and structure by James Scott Bell. I have read a lot of James Scott Bell's fiction. He writes a lot of legal thrillers and suspense books. I love his books. They're a lot of fun. They're always page turners. They have great mystery, and he structures them very well. So him writing a book on plot and structure is a great idea. This one, again, will take you through all kinds of things about plot and structure, and he'll give you exercises and ideas on things you can do while also pulling from other books to kind of show you, here's how this famous author did this. So this is a great one, Plot and Structure by James Scott Bell. In that same Writer's Digest series is Characters, Emotions, and Viewpoint by Nancy Kress. And this one is another one, takes you through exercises and ideas on how to think through your characters, their emotions, how to put emotion into your writing, as well as what are viewpoints? How do you think through first person, second person, third person, who knows what, omniscient narrators, all the things. She will take you through it in this book. On the same line, along with Characters and Viewpoint, and this one's by Orson Scott Card. He is the author of a lot of famous books, and the most famous one is totally skipping my mind. Ender's Game, that's the one. He wrote Ender's Game, so he's talking about characters and viewpoint, and this one is also another one in the Writer's Digest books. It goes through a lot of the similar kind of things as the other two, gives you exercises, ideas, homework on how to strengthen your characters and the viewpoint. Then, also from Writer's Digest books, but a different kind of series, is Crafting Novels and Short Stories. And this one is another one with essays on different topics, like this one's on creating vicious villains. You have things also in here like map your novel with a reverse outline. So there's a lot of fun things, and they're written by a lot of different authors who have written a lot of different kinds of books. So from mysteries to romance to thrillers to fantasy to sci-fi. So this one's a great one on just all the things about writing a novel and fiction writing. So definitely a good pickup. All right, the next one I have is from the NaNoWriMo people themselves, Ready, Set, Novel. This is a really awesome workbook on how to get your novel ready to go. I know we're right now halfway through National Novel Writing Month, but still, if you're floundering and you're like, I need a little help, this is a great book. Ready, Set, Novel will give you tons of open space as well as prompts to help you write down take your character through a daily schedule. What happens to them? You know, things also like give yourself a high five or give yourself a kick in the pants. Whatever you need to get you through this next writing sprint. So this is a great one. Ready, Set, Novel. Can't recommend it enough, from the NaNoWriMo team. It's a lot of fun. It's really easy to read. Highly recommend. The next one I have here, this one is super fascinating. I haven't gotten to finish reading the whole thing yet, and the author also has a podcast on the same topic, and it's called Fight Right. And this one is how to write believable fight scenes. So in my books, I have a lot of fantasy fights. So there's sometimes fights with monsters, fights with swords, fights with bows and arrows, all those sorts of things. So this book will take you through all that different kind of stuff, like what does hand-to-hand defense look like? And what does things like, getting to it, street fights, all the different kinds of fights you can think of. This author writes about it, Carla Hawk, and she has a podcast as well where she talks about some of these things. The podcast updates usually like every other month. So she has another topic like on sword fighting or on fighting with a bow staff, like lots of different things. And just what are the physics of those things. So Fight Right, if you have a lot of action scenes in your book, this is a great pickup. Along the lines of just overall writing, this is an interesting little book called Screenplay by Disney. And what this book does is it takes you through some big Disney movies like The Lion King, Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast, and helps you break down those stories and say, okay, what's happening in the story of that book? You can see I have this one bookmarked as well. I definitely was using a sticky note bookmark that time, but I like to bookmark some of these things that I'm like, oh, I want to go back to that and reread it and be encouraged or get an idea or something that stood out to me a lot. So Screenplay by Disney is a great one that just gives you some tips and techniques to bring magic to your movie making. And while yes, this is on screenplays, some of the principles can apply to writing, and you can think about it in the sense of writing a novel. How can I fit this into what I'm doing with my novel writing? The next couple books I have are for Christian writers in particular. So this one is called Kingdom Writers, Move Forward in God's Call to Write by CJ and Shelley Hitz. And so this is a quick little read. It's a real short little book. But it goes through a bunch of different topics on just an overview of thinking about God's calling in writing if you're a Christian author, and like what can you do in your writing so that you can share your message that you feel like you have. It's a little more focused on nonfiction than fiction, but some of the ideas still apply if you're a Christian writer. The next book I have is also for Christian writers, and I talked about this in my October reading roundup because I just finished reading it, but it's called Write Better by Andrew T. LePew, and this one is a lifelong editor on craft, art, and spirituality. I always think it's really interesting when an editor writes a writing book because they often have a very different perspective than authors. And they're on the other end of the book, kind of looking at it after it's a little more finished, and they're wanting to make it even more polished. So in this book, he breaks down kind of three different areas: the craft of writing, the art of writing, and then the spirituality of writing. And he really talks about, in this book, especially in the spirituality of writing, using writing as a spiritual discipline, something that you can do in your spiritual walk with God to get you closer to God as you write. This one's also a little more focused on nonfiction than fiction, but still has some great editing points and some good ideas. Even if you're not a Christian, the first couple parts of this book would be really fascinating, I think, from just the editor perspective on thinking through things like titles and thinking through stuff like just commas and some of those simple things. But I promise he does not write about grammar in a boring way. He makes it interesting throughout. Then, focusing in on a specific age group, I have Mary Cole's Writing Irresistible Kidlit. So this one, it's kind of focused on young adult and middle grade fiction, but she really talks about in this book the differences between young adult, middle grade, what makes a book young adult, what makes it upper young adult, what makes a more beginning young adult, or in between. And this is a great one that's really focused on writing for kids. So if you like to write fantasy fiction, science fiction, literary fiction for kids, this is a great book for you. Like I said, it'll really help you think through your writing for that age group in particular. focusing on young adult writing is writing great books for young adults. And this one is by Regina Brooks, and she takes you through everything you need to know from crafting the idea to landing a publishing deal. So she takes you through young adult book writing, how to write fiction for young adults, thinking through all the different pieces of that. It's a great read if you write young adult fiction. Then moving on for the what do you do after NaNoWriMo? You know, you've written this 50,000 plus word novel, and now you're wondering, what do I do with it? Well, I always am on the lookout for a good book on editing or revising or revision, and so I have a few here that I want to recommend to you. The first one is The Weekend Novelist Rewrites the Novel, and this one is by Robert J. Ray. This one is a great book to help you think through not just, okay, do I have all the commas in the right place, but is my story strong? Are my characters compelling, and do they have a good arc? Are my settings well realized? You know, does my tone match the topic of the book? Is my viewpoint always consistent? And so this author will just take you through all of those kinds of things to help you do really a macro edit is what it's called, that developmental edit from the 20,000 feet view out the airplane of your novel. So this is a great one. The Weekend Novelist Rewrites a Novel. Can't recommend this one enough. It's one I go back to quite often to look back at, oh wait, how do I look again at a character's emotional arc? Oh, okay, great. Yeah, I can put that into practice. Along the same lines, this one is a little more focused on getting down to the nitty-gritty of line edits, but it's called Self-Editing for Fiction Writers. And this one is a really great book and kind of takes you through some really specific ideas on things like dialogue and how to correctly format dialogue, things like that. This one, I've had it for a while. I still have it bookmarked in some places. This one is a receipt bookmark. Someday I'll have to show you my bookmark collection. I have a very interesting one. So this one goes through tons of different things like that, gives you exercises, prompts to help you think through, okay, now go back through your manuscript and look for these things in your edit. So that is Self-Editing for Fiction Writers. And then the last one I have on edit, actually not the last one, I have another one hiding back there, is another one from the Writer's Digest Write Great Fiction series called Revision and Self-Editing, and this one is also by James Scott Bell. This is another great one. I reread this one very often. I go back to it. This one does also have a bookmark from an old Christian supply store bookmark from a long time ago. So this one takes you through all kinds of things from characters to looking at plot, etc. Similar to the other two, but just from some different angles. And then this one is really focused on when you are ready to submit your book to an author or to an agent or to an editor or a publishing house. That is the First 5 Pages by Noah Lukeman. This one is great. Your first 5 pages do make an impression and are usually the difference between your book being in the slush pile or being chosen for consideration. So this one is a great one to think about. Your first 5 pages, like what are those things that editors are looking at the very beginning of your novel? How can you structure it and make it really compelling for an editor to say, I need to look at this whole manuscript, send me all the chapters. So that is the First 5 Pages by Noah Lukeman. And then lastly, I just have a couple of writing magazine suggestions. I like to read writing magazines every now and again. So this one is Writer's Digest. Great writing magazine if you want to look at that. A lot of times Barnes & Noble will have these on their stands. You can look through those. So that is Writer's Digest. The next one I want to share with you is called Poets and Writers. And this magazine, it's a little more focused broadly on all kinds of writing. Writer's Digest is too, but it generally tends towards fiction. This one has a lot of things about even poetry and about nonfiction, all kinds of writing. So that's Poets and Writers, usually also available on the Barnes & Noble stand. And then the last writing magazine that I would suggest is called The Writer. And this one is a great one that's a little general too, but it's also a little more focused on fiction. And so this one has, like, for instance, this edition had 75 writing prompts. So it has a lot of great things. These are usually a little bit thinner than the other two, but you can also find them at the Barnes & Noble stand. So I hope you've enjoyed taking a look at this shelf tour of all my writing books and the different ones that I have. I think there's a lot of fun to read. I like to read about writing, oddly enough, since I like to write. And so check some of these out. Have you read any of these? Put it down in the comments below. Or if there's a book that I have missed that you think I should check out, let me know. I would love to take a look at it. So that's all I've got for you today. I hope you're having a great day. Check out Thrones. You can find it online at ShaunStevensonBooks.com for all the links there. So we'll see you next time. Bye!